what had happened to me. Juanita Broaddrick is a retired business owner that had the misfortune of meeting Bill Clinton.
Good evening. 4 decades have passed since Juanita Broaddrick says future President Bill Clinton, then the Arkansas Attorney General, raped her in a Little Rock hotel room. While time passes, she says the pain and suffering she experiences does not. Her story received renewed attention recently with the nationwide Me Too movement. But she says her story doesn't begin with a sexual assault. It begins in a sleepy town in northwestern Arkansas.
When I was a child, my sister and I suffered from verbal and emotional and physical abuse from my mom. And that stigma and the emotional pain of that followed me all through my life until my mom died.
When you go through that sort of trauma, I mean, does that have an impact on your life as well for the long term when it's a parent doing that?
Oh yeah, because I was in business with my mom, and it was a problem day after day after day, as you'll see in my book, and I explain how we related in a business, being an adult abused child.
Did you think that she did have some sort of disorder? And of course, during that time, it wasn't really understood the way it is now.
Oh no, not at all. You know, and I often wondered if she might be bipolar, or she had a total hysterectomy, which they stripped her of all of her female organs when she was 22. And sewed her up, pardon the expression, and sent her home, you know, with no hormonal therapy at all. And I didn't think about that at the time because I wasn't that familiar with all that. But as I look back, I wonder if that isn't what happened.
Why'd you decide to become a nurse?
I didn't decide. It was sort of decided for me. I wanted to be, I wanted to go to college and study vocal. I got a vocal scholarship from a local university here in this area. And my dad said, nope, you're not going to do that. So I didn't accept the scholarship. And at the very last minute, I decided I got to do something. And a month before classes began, I started at Sparks School of Nursing here locally.
From there, Broaddrick began dreaming of a business of her own, a dream that would set her on a collision course with Bill Clinton.
This was in the very, very early days of nursing homes. The guidelines were extremely minimal. And I just kept working my way up the ladder to a better paying job. And then when we moved back home, I went to work for a facility in Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is just across the river from me, and managed it. And during this time, I was very interested in building my own nursing home, because when you work for others, you can just see little things that you want to change. And I knew I could run a good facility. It was exciting, the thought of it. So that's what happened. I eventually built my own nursing home, Brownwood Manor in Van Buren.
So somewhere amongst all of this, you adopted your son, right?
Oh yes, that was the biggest blessing of my life. I had not been able to get pregnant after we moved back to this area. And I went to the doctor, and it was discovered that I had severe endometriosis, and treatment didn't help at all. So my husband and I decided to adopt, and we were very fortunate to get my son Kevin when he was 2 days old. It was just the light of my life.
And you saw him, and you said, "This is my son." What were the feelings that you experienced?
Well, I went through all of the preparations of fixing the nursery and getting all ready for him, but I didn't know if it was a little boy or a little girl. And so getting all ready for him, it was so exciting. And from the day the doctor called and told me that when the baby was going to be born, this was my baby. But when we showed up at the pediatrician's office and my attorney's wife came in that door with that baby boy, I could have cried right then. It was the most remarkable thing that had ever happened to me. And when she put that baby boy, 2 days old, in my arms, it was just the most joyous occasion.
So there's a photo here. I'm holding up a photo. This is you and Bill Clinton and a couple of others back in the 70s. Tell me approximately when this photo was taken and what was going on in this photo.
I was volunteering for the Clinton campaign at the time. I had never been involved in politics at all. I was trying to run my own facility. It was just a thrill. But I was not really that involved. But someone asked me to go to a volunteers meeting, and so I went with them. And I'd seen his commercials on TV, and I was just so impressed with him. So I thought, well, this is something I can do in the evening time, take around yard signs and help campaign for him. So that's what I did. And approximately a month after I began to volunteer, I had a call from the campaign office, and they wanted to let me know that Bill Clinton was going to be in the area touring different businesses, and could he come to mine? Boy, that was exciting. You know, the very thought that the next governor, everybody knew he was going to win, that the next governor would be coming to my nursing home. We were having one problem after another with the state reimbursement program. And it was I was almost to the point at times, I thought, why did I do this? I'm never going to make this work because the reimbursement program was so low.
What specific conversations that you had with him when you first met him? And I hear from a lot of people that when he talks to you, he makes it feel like you're the only person in the room.
Exactly, he does. He had so much charisma. When he talked to you, his eyes never left your eyes. It was just sort of mesmerizing. But after we took that photo, he came over to me and was just so nice and engaging. And like I said, you never lost eye contact with him. And asking about me and about my business. And light bulb goes off, and I think, oh my God, I need to tell him the dilemma we're in. He needs to know that nursing homes in Arkansas are struggling, that in order to provide quality care, our rates have got to go up. They were too low. And so I began to talk to him about this, and when I did, he just sort of perked up and he said, I would love to talk to you about that sometime. And he said, are you ever in Little Rock? And I said, yeah. In fact, I'll be there in 2 or 3 weeks. I'm bringing my director of nursing down to a seminar. And he said, well, when you get there, call my campaign office and let's talk about this. This is important. And so after he left, I went over and told the girls, I said, he wants to know. These were women that were getting minimum wage and the very least that I could afford to pay them. And the likelihood of being able to increase our per diem, I mean, would be wonderful for everybody. So this is exciting. So I went home and immediately started working on graphs and had a file folder about this thick of information that I wanted to show him when we went to Little Rock.
To you, I mean, this was a business relationship. This was going to be you're trying to get money for your business.
Exactly. Okay, but you know, there's something I've thought about during all the interviews and everything I've had. If he had said to me that day, when he was in my nursing home, hey, let's meet in your room and have coffee and talk about this. No, I would never have done that. It's the way that it progressed and the way that he made it progress to the point that we ended up in my room.
And let's not forget also at the time, he was running for governor, but he was the attorney general.
Exactly.
Of the state where you live, of the state where you have a business. In my mind, I don't think the Attorney General is a sexual predator. Why would anyone think that?
That was just so far from my mind that this whole episode would ever end up in my room. I was timid when it came to men. So it was a gradual thing because of him, and I'll explain why.
Sure.
That's how it ended.
Sure.
But had it started that way, I think he sensed that I was a timid person when he talked to me. And I think that was his plan to increase as the conversation went along. Okay. Norma and I get to Little Rock the night before. The next morning, we wake up and I told her, I said, I'm going to call the campaign office and see if we can't run over there at noontime and meet with them. And so I called the campaign office, and a young lady answered, and I said, hi, this is Mrs. Hickey. I was told to call the office when I'm in the area. She said, oh, yes. I was surprised that she knew. She said, oh, yes, Mrs. Hickey. Mr. Clinton told me if you ever called to call this number, which I found out later was his apartment or something like that. And so I called the number. He answered the phone just almost immediately. And I told him the situation, that we were there, and that we would like to run over at noontime on our break. And he said, no, I'm not going to be there. He said, I'll just come to your hotel now. And he said, we can meet in the Camelot coffee shop. So I thought, my God, that's awesome. So I told Norma, I said, you go on to the meeting, and I will be on to the meeting just as soon as I finish in the coffee shop. So I stayed in the room, and I waited, and about 30 minutes later, I get a call. And he said, hi, this is Bill Clinton. Coffee shop's pretty crowded, and there's some reporters down there. Can we just have coffee in your room? And I can't remember exactly. Knowing how I was probably a little bit alarmed. But like you said, he's the Attorney General of the state of Arkansas, and didn't really have any fear. So I told him, yes, that would be fine. I would order coffee to the room. And he said, okay, I'm talking to somebody, and I'll be up in a little bit. So the people came, the man came and delivered the coffee, set it over on the table, got ready for the meeting, had all of my forms laid out that I wanted to show him. And then just as soon as the room service left, I heard a knock on the door. And I went to the door. Of course, I always peep through. And there stood somebody in sunglasses. So I opened the door, and it was Bill Clinton. And I thought that was so strange that he would be standing out in the hallway in his sunglasses. So I told him to come on in. And I took him over to the table and started to pour us a cup of coffee. And, okay, I need to stop. Yeah. I don't know how far I can go into this without crying. You know, I just don't know.
The trauma was too difficult for Broaddrick to relive at that exact moment, but we did take a short break, and she decided to come back and tell her story. What she tells me is that Clinton bit her lip, causing it to swell up and bleed before raping her twice, then leaving the hotel room. We want to warn our viewers that what you're going to hear next may be traumatic or disturbing.
I ushered him into the room. He walked in, takes off his suit coat and lays it over the chair, and then walks over to where I poured the coffee. And I can't remember exactly what was said. It was just pleasantries. You know, we were talking back and forth. I was extremely nervous because I was talking to such an important person, and I wanted my presentation to really be good, you know, for him to understand. And then he starts talking. He goes over to the window, and he starts talking about a little building that's down there on the riverfront, and sort of motions for me to come over there where he's standing. And he points to this building, and as he points to it, he puts his arm around my shoulder to point to it, and that felt uncomfortable, you know, right away. That just didn't feel right. But I still was okay. You know, didn't have a problem with it. And then, I know I keep squirming. I can't help it. It's coming up, you know. And then he turns me to him, and he starts trying to kiss me. And this was a shock. You know, it wasn't anything at all like I thought it was going to be. I thought this was a business meeting. And here he is trying to kiss me. And I push him back. And I say, I'm married. But I also go in to explain to him, I'm not only married, I have a very serious relationship with another man. And like I said, I don't know if that's exactly how I said it to him, but I made him aware that my marriage was in jeopardy and I had a relationship with another man. He didn't say anything. He just began to push me backwards toward the bed. And I can still almost feel myself falling backwards on the bed. It was frightening. It was surreal. This was really happening to me. And then I began to yell and scream, and he was on top of me, and he immediately started biting my upper lip. And I couldn't believe that. It was just so painful. And I don't think I can do it. I can't go into the rape.
It's hard. It's hard for you to talk about it even now.
Yeah.
How long has it? It's been almost 40 years.
Yeah, it's so difficult. And here I'll be 75 next week, and I'm sitting here crying about something that happened so long ago. But it was just so painful, you know. I was being raped. My clothes were being torn. My lip was being bitten. And this was all against my will. It was horrible. And I couldn't believe it. And so I remember thinking during the rape, please get off of me. I can't breathe. I couldn't breathe. And then when it was over, I sat up on the side of the bed, and I'm still in a state of shock. I mean, what had just happened to me? And I just wanted him to leave. So he started to straighten himself, and he put on his suit coat. And as he walked over to the door, he looked back and he put on his sunglasses, and he said, you better put some ice on that, and walked out the door.
And you were laying there on the bed crying?
I was sitting up, but I couldn't believe what had happened to me. It was terrible. That's not even a good word for it. It was horrific.
How just terrible were you feeling?
I felt like a piece of human garbage. And I had this overwhelming fear after he left. I rushed over and locked the door because I felt like somebody's going to come in to get rid of the body. And that's what I felt like, was a body.
How soon after did your friend and associate come and find you in the room?
I can't remember for sure. I just know I went back to the bed after I locked the door and laid down and just wanted to go to sleep and wake up from this horrible nightmare that this man had put me through. I still didn't feel like it was real. I laid there thinking, my God, what just happened? Did this just happen to me by the Attorney General of the state of Arkansas? So it could have been an hour. It could have been 45 minutes. It could have been an hour and a half. I don't know. But I heard her knocking at the door, and I went over to it. I didn't know it was her. And as I opened the door, I saw her, and when she saw me, the look on her face just sort of brought me back to reality. Yeah, I must look like holy hell right now. And she grabbed me, and I started crying all over again.
What did you guys do next? You left.
We left, but first she, being the nurse she is, she went and got ice for my mouth, helped me change clothes. I was in such sad shape. My clothes were all torn, pantyhose ripped, lip bleeding, had blood down my face from my lip. So she cleaned all that up and put ice on my face and said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I just want to go home." This was before noon that she got there. I would say approximately 10:30 or 11 on the mid-morning break because I hadn't showed up for the meeting. So she packed up everything, and I just sit there, while she did everything. I couldn't do anything else. So we left for Van Buren, and I remember on the way home, she stopped twice for ice to ice down my mouth. And at the time we said, what do we do? What do we do with this? It's just out there. What do you do with it? And we both decided we don't do anything. Nobody's going to believe us. No one in the world. He's the Attorney General. You just accept that you let an evil man come to your room and take the blame.
There's one part about Broaddrick's story that has often baffled its listeners. It's what he told her after the rape. According to Broaddrick, Clinton told her he had mumps as a child and was sterile and couldn't have children. The puzzling fact is that 2 years later, Chelsea Clinton was born. Broaddrick tells me that the rumors at the time were that Hillary Clinton had gone to Europe for then experimental fertility treatments.
Just right after he got up from the rape, and I was lying there crying. I was crying. And he turns to me and he's halfway upset and halfway bewildered at this look on his face. And he says, "Don't worry, I'm sterile. I had mumps when I was a kid." And I thought, what? Why are you telling me that? You've just raped me. That was just such a bizarre statement to make to me at the time.
Broaddrick says after the attack, she told several friends about the incident.
I had close relationships with all these people, and they knew I was telling the truth, no doubt. And these were people that I saw on a regular basis and knew that there was something wrong with me. By that time, my lip had gone down. I could cover the bruises with makeup, but just like I relate to in the book, they knew that I had a wounded spirit. You couldn't, no amount of makeup was going to hide that. I was a different person after that. I became a very different person.
Are you permanently damaged spiritually, emotionally by the rape?
I think I'm doing better spiritually. I think I've accepted that bad things can happen to good people, but emotionally is my problem. When I have to relate what happened, it's just like it just all comes flooding back, and I cannot control. I don't know if that will ever change because it was so traumatic. I don't know if I can ever handle that.
Once someone rapes you, you don't really want to campaign for them anymore or vote for them or anything like that. What did you do with, you would have amassed t-shirts and buttons and other campaign stuff, right?
Well, it's a very interesting story. There was a business in town, that it was called K Chair Company. And every evening they would have a big bonfire behind their business. And this bonfire, people could bring things to burn if they wanted to and throw on. Well, I had decided that later that evening, one evening that week after it had happened, that I wanted to completely rid my van of everything. So I drove out there. I can't remember if I told my husband where I was going or what. And he never went and helped me anyway with the delivering campaign material. He probably didn't even, he may have seen what was in my nursing home van, but I don't know. But I drove out there and I just got this idea, I'm going to go burn everything. And I backed my van up to it, opened up the back doors, and as close as I could get to the fire, and I just started tossing everything, tossing yard signs, bumper stickers, T-shirts. Can't remember if I had very many hats. And it just felt so good. I was burning the name Bill Clinton. And it was just so good to see it go all up in ashes. I loved it. It was just a little bitty victory, but it felt good.
Tell me about the event where you met Hillary Clinton.
Oh, that was horrible. It was about 2 weeks after the rape. And one of my employees comes in and brings a folder. I had thrown everything away, but I had a little folder of 3 or 4 checks that was written to the Clinton campaign. When I would put up yard signs, some people would say, here's this for the campaign. And so I had those in my van. One of the employees that was driving residents came and brought it to my assistant, Berta Young, and she brought it to me. So I had already called the campaign office to tell them that I couldn't volunteer anymore, that my business was taking too much of my time, and I needed to drop out. And so I asked them, I said, after they brought the checks to me, I called the office and I said, where can I mail these to you since I'm not going to be seeing anyone anymore? And she told me that the lady from the state office would be at the campaign fundraiser tomorrow night. I had helped organize this fundraiser at Dr. Criswell and his wife Betty's home. Betty and I played tennis at the same tennis complex, and Buddy was my dentist. So I was very close to these people, and I thought, they're going to be disappointed if I don't at least show up. So I thought, I'll just go up and give these to the campaign lady from the state and make my exit before the Clintons get there. So that's what I did. Drove up there about 20 minutes early, went in and gave them to the lady from the state, told her I wasn't feeling well and that I was going to be leaving, but that I came up to make sure everything was going okay. And I was about to walk out. And about that time, probably 10 minutes before the event began, I see Bill and Hillary Clinton coming in the back. I'm standing in the living room area, and they're coming through the kitchen area. And I think, I've got to make my way to the front door. Before I could do that, here comes Chuck Watts. He was the driver that drove them from the airport. Chuck was a local pharmacist and a very good friend and a huge supporter of Bill Clinton. And he comes rushing over to me and he says, I just want to tell you that the topic of the conversation all the way from the airport was about you and Bill and Hillary Clinton asking questions about you. And let me tell you, I just sort of froze and rapidly going through my mind, I've got to get out of here. About that time, I look toward the kitchen, which is also toward the front door, and I see Hillary Clinton there, and a lady is pointing to me. And here comes Hillary Clinton right for me. I could not escape, no way. And as she walks to me, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, here comes this woman, this poor woman that's married to a rapist, and I'm so nervous. How am I going to handle this? And she comes over to me, has a wonderful smile, very cordial, and says, I'm so glad to meet you. We introduced ourselves. And she said, I'm just so glad to meet you. I want to tell you how happy that Bill and you're working in his campaign, and we're just so, so happy for the things you do for his campaign. And I just sort of standing there speechless, not knowing what to say. And so I turned and start to leave. I may have said thank you. I may have nodded, but I turned to leave. And then all of a sudden I feel somebody from behind grabbing my arm. And I thought somebody wants to say goodbye to me before I go. And I turn around, and it's Hillary Clinton. And, I'm sort of shocked. And that pleasant smile is gone, and it's replaced with this very angry scowl. And she pulls me back to her. She's got a firm grip on my arm. And she pulls me back to her, down to her face, and says, "Do you understand everything you do?"
What went through your mind when she said that? Did you know instantly you knew what she was talking about?
Exactly. You don't change from a nice, congenial person to this hateful looking expression saying, "Do you understand?" And boy, I jerked my arm from hers and I left immediately.
Was it at that point or later that you sort of came to the realization and understanding that this woman knows exactly what her husband is all about?
Oh, I did. I did. And at that very moment in time, I thought she knew that he had raped me. I don't know now. I don't have any idea what she knew, but she knew that I was a threat. And she was telling me to keep quiet. I don't know what extent she knew that I was a threat, but she was definitely telling me, "Lady, you keep quiet about my husband."
Did he call you? He called you.
Oh, yes. Yes, he did. And what was so uncomfortable about it is my assistant would come to me and say that Bill Clinton was on the phone. And the first time it happened, I said, "Tell him I'm busy, that I can't come to the phone." And she did not know the situation. So she would say, "Are you sure? And I said, "Yes, tell him I'm busy." And so this happened 2 or 3 more times. And I still couldn't tell her what had happened. I just said, "Yes, it's important. Just tell him I'm not here." And I'm sure she may have found out from someone from time to time. But then a time after that, I was alone at noontime when the others had gone to eat. And I was in my office, and I answered the phone, and I say, my usual greeting, I say, "Brownwood Manor, Mrs. Hickey, where can I direct your call?" And there's a short pause, and I hear this male voice say, "Hi, it's Bill. When are you coming back to Little Rock?" When are you coming back to Little Rock?
Where you raped me?
Yeah. What? How could somebody say that? Anyway, I don't remember if I said I'm not or I just hung up.
So then he was elected governor.
That was horrible. To think I'd helped. I'd helped to promote that. I'd talked to so many of my friends, so many of the people that I knew at church, so many of the people at the Chamber of Commerce and all the meetings I would attend. I was a spokesperson. How could I go back and tell them now? I couldn't.
It had been more than a decade since Broaddrick had encountered Clinton, but she says in 1991 she was summoned out of a seminar and came face to face with then Governor Clinton.
I was at a nursing home seminar with Norma and her sister Jean, and we were in Little Rock. And all of a sudden, this gentleman comes to the door and says, "Juanita Broaddrick is wanted in the hallway." So I looked at the girls and they looked at me, and so I got up and went out, and then shortly thereafter they followed me. When I got to the door, the man pointed down to an elevator area. He said, "Someone needs to speak to you down here." And I walked down there where he pointed, and as I rounded the corner, there stands Bill Clinton. And I go around the corner and I stopped abruptly. I just could not believe that he was there. I thought it was some type of emergency from home. And he comes over to me and he tries to take my hand, which I wouldn't allow. And he starts saying things like, "I just want to tell you how sorry I am." Now, I'm paraphrasing, Nick. I can't remember exactly what was said. Just the gist of it, that he's so sorry. He's a changed man. And I'm a family man, is what he said. And he said, "I hope you can forgive me." And I stood there, and I don't know how long I was silent. And I just looked at him. And finally I said, "You go to hell." And I walked off.
At that moment, why did you think he had come, he sought you out? Somehow he found you.
Well, I was still in a shock when I got back to my friends who were standing about 30, 40 feet behind me. I was just still, I said, "You're not going to believe what just happened." And he was hid behind the corner. They couldn't see him. I said, "That was Bill Clinton." And he just apologized to me for the rape. And we all, I mean, you just look sort of bug-eyed at each other like, what? So we went to lunch shortly after that, and we were sitting down at our table. And I remember Jean or Norma saying to me, "Do you think you really meant it? What was that all about?" And I said, "Lord, I don't know. I have no idea," because I was still so surprised at the event. And so we talked, and to our mistake, gave him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he's remorseful. Maybe he really is sorry for what he did. And then I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks later that he announced he was running for president. And then I realized I was just a loose end he was trying to tie up.
Another instance of Clinton's contact with Broaddrick, a letter she received in the mail congratulating her for having one of the top nursing homes in the state. And at the bottom of the letter, a handwritten note from Clinton himself.
When I was voted the best nursing home in the state by the Arkansas Department of Human Services, we were just so proud of it. And I get this letter from the state, the governor's office, and it's just looks like a form letter that they would write for people that had won awards. And it goes all through, you know, congratulating us on our high excellent award. And then across the bottom of it is scrolled in his handwriting, "I admire you very much."
How did Broaddrick take that?
Thanks for your continued silence. Now, whether he had anything to do with me receiving that award, I doubt, because we were the best nursing home in the state. I don't know.
But he saw the opportunity there to...
Yeah, to make connection. To make connection. And it was just like a little dig or something that he was saying, "I'm still here, and you better still keep quiet."
This man becomes president of the United States. When that happened, what did you think?
I was just so disappointed. You know, all through this time, from the time that he apologized to me, Jennifer Flowers came out, and there were so many other women that I heard were coming out that actually didn't. And I just thought, when Jennifer Flowers came out, this would do him in. And I was relieved. I thought, good, I won't have to come forward. But as we know, he's bulletproof, and so is she. It didn't happen.
Throughout Clinton's 1992 presidential campaign and extending into his 2 terms as president, he was on the receiving end of 2 accusations of sexual misconduct that at first he denied, then was later forced to admit. Those 2 were Monica Lewinsky and Jennifer Flowers.
Yes, I was Bill Clinton's lover for 12 years.
He also denies the allegations of Kathleen Willey and Paula Jones, though he later paid Jones a 6-figure settlement. Now the president, in his own words, contradicting each other.
She's alleging, and is described in some detail in a supermarket tabloid, which she calls a 12-year affair with you.
That allegation is false.
And I had to admit, under this definition, that I'd actually had sexual relations with Jennifer Flowers.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong.
Do you think that even just that small part shows that he's known to lie about these things?
Oh, sure. And so is she. And for her to say that this shocked her, you know, if you've ever read Jennifer's account, she knew what was going on between them. And whether she just didn't care, but certainly wanted him to be very quiet about it. I don't know. But her little scenes that she had done from time to time in supporting him, and on years later, her little Tammy Wynette, that she didn't stand by your man routine.
You know, I'm not sitting here as some little woman standing by my man like Tammy Wynette.
That was so fake.
It was sort of offensive to the women that he's hurt.
Oh yes, yes it was, and who knows how many that number has gotten up to.
How many women do you believe there have been? You know some of them now. You've met a lot of them, right?
Yes, I've met a lot of them that will never come forward. I mean, their lips are sealed. They do not, in any way, shape, form, or fashion, want to go through what I've had to go through. You know, I was talking with one of them here recently, and we were saying, wonder how many there's been. 200, 300, I don't know. Who knows? You can't guess.
Broaddrick was later pulled into the Paula Jones case in an attempt to corroborate her story that Jones had been sexually harassed by Clinton. They attempted to find other victims of sexual assault. How did you come to learn of the Jones lawsuit initially?
On the news, you know, I didn't know. I knew that she was suing him. And then, I mean, I was just barely aware of it and aware of who she was. And then all of a sudden one day, I go to my front door before I had my security gate, and there's a couple standing there, a man and a woman. And I didn't want to invite them into my house because I didn't know them. So I walked out onto the porch to talk to them. And lo and behold, I find out later, after my discussion with them, that they were investigators for the attorneys that were representing Paula Jones. And interesting fact, their name was Rick and Beverly Lambert, the parents of Miranda Lambert, long before she became a country star. And they were very nice. But at the time, they did not tell me they were recording me. So I just had a casual conversation with them. And they told me that they were investigators for the Paula Jones attorneys. And would I be interested in speaking with them about Bill Clinton? And I said, no, I won't. I will not go into that at all. It was too horrible. And they kept prodding me, trying to get me to say something. And I never would mention his name. I wouldn't go into the degree that it was horrible. But they knew there was something there. And they took that recording back to Paula Jones' attorneys. And that's when I was notified that I had become Jane Doe, number 5, in the Paula Jones suit.
You admit that you lied in that lawsuit in a deposition and an affidavit. Tell us what went through your head in that decision-making process, because obviously you had not gone public with this since it had happened, and now you were they were trying to force you.
Yeah. I was pulled unwillingly into this, and I was so angry, and I was adamant with my attorney, and I told him, I said, you get me out of this. I am not going to be a part of that lawsuit. And that's when I lied. I just wasn't going to allow somebody to pull me into their own lawsuit for their own personal reasons. It just wasn't fair.
Now where all of these women are coming out with allegations, it was a totally different time period for sexual abuse, right?
Oh, exactly. And here we were 20 years after the fact, and when it happened, there's no way anyone would have believed me. It was the same way in '99. This was a powerful president. He was one that you cannot go up against. It was fearful, even the very thought of making the allegations against him, the allegations that were true.
Did that also come into your mind when you were approached for that, thinking that these are powerful people? If I'm forced to do this now, what will they do to me?
Oh, it scared me to death. It seems like I was always looking over my shoulder, especially after 1991, when I was all of a sudden pulled out of a meeting. How did he know I was there? How to make that apology to me? I began to look around a little more carefully every time I went to my car, every time I left my home. I was frightened.
You know, there was a scandal involving the Clinton White House where they illegally had FBI files on people in the White House. They were taken to the White House. So looking back on that now, I mean, do you think it's quite possible that there may have been a file on you?
Well, that's what I understood that there was. One of his attorneys or spokespeople referred to in a news conference the information that they had on the Clinton victims, saying, you know, tawdry things about our past and things like that. So I had a phone call one day from Judicial Watch, and they said, we think he has a file on you. Do you want us to go after it in the Freedom of Information Act? And I said, yes, I do. So I signed the proper forms.
What happened next in the sequence of events that eventually led to you coming out and going public?
I thought it was over. Once I went in there, I felt ashamed that I'd lied. But you have to remember, I was protecting my livelihood and my life. And it's just something I felt I had to do. It went on for a long time. And as soon as the media sort of got wind of this, I had people start calling me and asking for interviews and things of that nature. But then, all of a sudden one day, my attorney gets a phone call or a letter or something from Ken Starr's people, the independent counsel, saying they would like to have an interview with me. And I called my son immediately. And he said, Mom, I'm coming over to talk to you. So he came over. He said, it's time. You've got to tell the truth. And I said, I can't. I just can't. I've lied all of these years when anybody's asked me about it. I just can't. He said, you have to. He said, this is the difference between the federal government and a civil lawsuit. And he said, you got to tell the truth. I know it's going to be hard, but you've got to go in there and tell the truth. And that's basically what happened. Hard. That's the file that was in Congress that all of the Democrats wouldn't look at. All the Republicans did and encouraged them to, but they didn't want to know during the impeachment.
So tell me what led to you eventually appearing in 1999 on Dateline.
Oh, as soon as it got out, even though my records for the impeachment were sealed, it just leaked out bit by bit. And I started getting all these calls for interviews from Barbara Walters, Connie Chung, Roseanne Barr. And then I got this nice letter from Lisa Myers. And it was different than the rest. And then our phone calls started. We talked on the phone off and on for probably close to a year, maybe 8 months, 9 months, or a year. And I developed a relationship with her. So even when the others would call, I still had her in the top of my mind. If I did come forward, she'd be the one.
So what prompted you to eventually invite them in and finally sit down and do the actual interview?
It's when a letter came out, and it was being made more public by a man named Philip Yoakum. And he was stating in this letter about the rape. And he and Sheffield Nelson, who used to be a gubernatorial candidate against Bill Clinton, were saying that they were sure that I was bought off, that no one could keep that quiet about an incident so horrible without being reimbursed or bought off. That made me angry. And so that was floating around out there on CNN and everywhere. Well, she's not going to come forward. They've paid her off.
And that is not true. You weren't paid off.
No. No one ever approached me with a financial gain for keeping quiet. I kept quiet on my own. And then when I came forward, it was because of my son's insistence, which was the right thing to do.
So tell me what happened after NBC left and they taped the interview. It didn't air as planned right away, right?
No, we were told that it would air approximately 10 days to 2 weeks afterwards.
Before his impeachment trial.
Yeah, this is what they were trying. This is what Lisa was trying to do. But she soon found out that's not what her network wanted. And she fought hard for this. About 2 weeks after, when we thought it was going to air, I get a phone call from her, and she said, well, we're still going through the investigating process, and She said, I have good news and I have bad news. And she said, the good news is you're credible. And I thought, oh, what's the bad news? And she said, Juanita, the bad news is you're very credible. Oh, I don't know what that meant until the weeks drug on that NBC officials knew that I was telling the truth. And if it hadn't been for Russert, I found out later, it wouldn't have been showed at all.
When you hear something like that, the fact that a major American TV network is going to conceal this from the public, how does it make you feel? How does it make you feel about the state of the American media?
Oh, that's the first taste I'd ever had of it, Nick. I had no idea that the media could operate in that fashion. I had put my heart and soul out there into that interview. And now I find out that they say they've got to have more investigating done. Nothing that they found was after the original date it was to be viewed. So they went with it after the impeachment. They could have gone with it before.
Do you believe they intentionally withheld it to protect the president?
Oh, without a doubt. In my own mind, that's what I think. I think it was purposely held.
We see a lot of that now, don't we? We still see media bias, don't we? And that was, as you said, your first taste of it. But do you think that there's still... You think about, the person in charge of NBC News then was Andy Lack, and he's back now at NBC News.
I know, and I don't understand that. If you saw the tweet that I put out the other day when I tweeted, and it just went viral, that Andy Lack had just fired Matt Lauer. And I said, why is Andy Lack still at NBC? And then I went on to say that I felt like he was the one responsible for holding my dateline until after the impeachment. And I truly believe that.
There's a supermarket tabloid, and it says, you're on the cover. You're on the cover with Princess Diana, the most famous woman in the world. You walk into Walmart, and there you are next to Princess Diana.
I know. So embarrassing.
How do you even, in a town like this, how do you even get through daily life when you're at the supermarket on the checkout line?
I go in a hat and sunglasses. It's really hard. Sometimes people would recognize me, but most of the time I did a pretty good job of going, where they couldn't tell who I was. I didn't like the attention. I didn't like the attention that it was bringing. And it was mostly positive, but I was not used to being in the public eye like that. I was a quiet person, ran my own business and my own life, and now my life was laid out for all to see.
How did that affect your marriage and your life?
I think it was ultimately what caused my marriage to end. It was a huge strain. In the beginning, my husband at the time did not want me to come forward. But as he saw that I needed to tell my story, he became much more encouraging. But then after it was over, and you look around in your everyday life, and people know what happened to my wife. I go through it and say, all these people, are they staring at me because they know what happened to me, or do they even know who I am? It was difficult in our life. And I think it got worse and worse by the year. And then we finally divorced 3 years later. We just sort of drifted apart.
Broaddrick says Hillary Clinton angered her with her words about sexual assault during the 2016 presidential campaign. She says all survivors of sexual assault deserve to be believed.
And I heard about that, and I made a tweet long before the one that went viral. And I think it said something to the effect, how dare you? How dare you make that statement? You don't deserve to make that statement. And then a couple of months went by, and I see her on TV making this same statement. And I thought to myself, I'm fed up. I'm tired. I've been quiet long enough. So I remember my grandson and my son talking about Twitter. And I thought, I'm going to go on Twitter, by golly, even though I had no idea how. I told my grandson, I said, I need for you, called him on the phone when he got home from school, and I said, I need for you to walk me through Twitter. I need to get on Twitter and make a statement. He didn't care what it was. Lord, I was his grandmother. He could have cared less. And so he walked me through it. So the next morning, I get on my iPhone and I start typing in what I've written down. That's the amount of letters that are required. And so all of a sudden I think, you know, I'm going to do it. And I punched tweet and all hell broke loose. I had not said anything differently than I had years before, and when I would make comments to different people, there was nothing different. It's just that it was instant and it went around the world. And to many millennials and people that had never even heard my name before. I mean, the majority of the people had never heard my name before. And my son called me and said, Mom, what did you do? And I said, I don't know. I didn't know the power of Twitter. I had no idea. But it just propelled me back out there again.
So during the campaign season, Sean Hannity was doing an interview with then candidate Donald Trump, now President Trump, and Sean's talking about the different accusations against Bill Clinton, and President Trump finishes his sentence. He says, and he's been accused of rape.
Yeah. Sean's talking all through there, and he said he's accused of groping and all of these things, and Sean sort of stops and he goes, and then Donald Trump says, and rape? You could have, I think I fell out of my chair. For a presidential candidate, for that to come out of his mouth, but to know that he was saying it about me, you know, I felt it personally. And I thought, my God, he just said that word. That word was so repulsive to me for so long, and I couldn't say the word. I'd always say sexual assault. When I went on the TV with Lisa Myers, she said the word, and I just responded yes. I couldn't say it. It was too horrific. From that day forward, I was able to say it because that's what it was.
Yes.
No matter how bad it sounded, by gosh, that's what it was.
So how did you then become sort of involved in going to that second debate? At the first debate, Donald Trump had said, you know, I could pull this information out, I could bring these women in, and he said, well, I'm not going to. The second debate, there you are. You're back in the spotlight. You're there at this debate. What happened? How did you even get there?
Well, I need to lead up to that.
Yeah.
After Donald Trump said that, you know, I was not on the Trump bandwagon. I was not a huge supporter of Donald Trump. I sort of thought about it like James Woods tweeted, and he said, Trump may be vinegar, but Hillary is arsenic. And that's the way I sort of thought about it. And he would come out with all of these notions and ideas, and they just seemed so far-fetched. But then in a week, you could see they weren't far-fetched. This man knew what he was talking about. So I began to tweet in response to him and begin to tell reporters, yes, I think I'm going to support Trump. And then it was about the time that the Billy Bush tapes came out, just before the second debate. What was that, a day or two before the second debate? And so I was upset. I thought, you know, that is horrible what he said. It was offensive, but it was talk. And that's when I tweeted, actions speak louder than words. Donald Trump said some pretty bad things, but it doesn't compare of being raped by Bill Clinton. And he retweeted that day. And that's the way I felt. No one had proven anything other than this horrible tape that was so offensive. But that didn't compare to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton wasn't the presidential nominee. I mean, the presidential, you know, candidate. But Hillary Clinton was.
And Hillary Clinton threatened you.
And Hillary Clinton threatened me and knew all about Bill Clinton's past and what he had done to women.
You know, she's called women anything from narcissistic Looney Tunes, bimbo eruptions,
Right.
failed cabaret singers.
Right.
That's just what we know. That's just what's been reported.
Yeah.
You know, Lord knows what she says behind closed doors, right?
Oh yeah, that's only what we know. That's been put out there. Yeah.
A young woman asked her at a campaign appearance, they asked her, well, what do you say to people like Juanita Broaddrick? Hillary Clinton says that you've been proven wrong and that you've been discredited.
Yeah, what else can she say? I mean, she's struggling. She was struggling then when I came back out. And it was such a lie. But everything she says is a lie. You know, you can't believe anything the woman says.
And how did Broaddrick end up at that second presidential debate alongside Paula Jones, Kathleen Lulli, and Kathy Shelton?
Yeah, but I didn't know it was coming up. I was in Washington for the Breitbart interview. The three of us, Paula Jones and Kathleen Lulli and myself, all went to Washington, D.C. to be interviewed by Aaron Klein. And it was over a 2-day period. When I was leaving Washington, D.C., I was on the plane and we were getting ready to taxi down the runway and my phone rings. And I cannot for the life of me remember who it was, but it was somebody representing Mr. Trump in his organization, I assume, that said, we'd like to have you at the second debate tomorrow night. I was on a plane. It was 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, going down the runway to Arkansas, and they wanted me to, when I got home, to go back to St. Louis and be there for the debate the next day. And I said, you know, I'm just going to have to think about this. I called my son. He said, no, Mom, that tape was terrible. You just can't go. And then I called the other ladies, and we decided. We'd been shoved into the woodwork for too long and been told to shut up and go away. And we wanted to appear with him. We wanted to do anything that we could to support him against Hillary Clinton. So that's what we did.
There is a photo that's come out of President Clinton in the audience there when you and the rest of them walk in. And how do you describe the look on his face?
Shock, horror. He didn't know we were going to be there. Nobody knew we were going to be there. We were hidden. And I was asked to wear sunglasses, hat, anything I could to try to disguise my appearance and who I was, and the others were too. They did not want the media to know that we were going to be there with President Trump. And I think when he turned and pivoted around in his chair and saw the four of us, along with Kathy Shelton, walking in, I think he almost had a stroke.
There was this news conference. You're out there in front of everyone on that table with the president and the other women. What was that experience like?
Shock. We didn't know that was going to happen. We were told that we were being taken very quietly and secretly to Mr. Trump's hotel to meet him so we could meet him before the debate. So we go into the hotel and we go up the service elevator and are still hid from sight so no one can see us. And we go up to the top floor to meet him. And we go in this large room and there's other people around, and that's when I see the other women. And we all talk for a little while, and Mr. Trump comes in, acknowledges each one of us very kindly, just soft-spoken voice. And then all of a sudden somebody says, we need for you ladies to go in this other room. And we sort of looked at each other and we thought, okay, this is where we're supposed to go out to the cars. And we walk in and there's this long table for 5 people, and they tell us where to sit. And I'm looking at Kathleen, she's sitting over here on my right, and down around to Paula, and asked him, what are we doing here? What is this? And, you know, everybody's going, we don't know. Then all of a sudden, Mr. Trump comes in and sits between us. And he looks around at us, and then he goes, you know, let him in. And I didn't know what he meant by let him in. And all of a sudden, all these reporters with their cameras start coming through this door. And I'm looking at Kathleen. I said, what's this? And she's saying, I don't know. And we're looking, they come in and they just sort of do a stop. You know, like, what is this? They thought they were coming in to talk to just Mr. Trump. And we're looking as startled at them as they are looking back at us. And then all of a sudden, Donald Trump says, thank you for coming. These nice ladies have agreed to be here and they have a statement for you. And I thought, a statement for you? And so he looks down at Paula, and I know she's just searching for words to say, but hers were just it was very nice. But anyway, she starts, then it goes to Kathy Shelton, and then it comes to me. Before it got to me, I started thinking, what am I going to say? Of course I support Donald Trump, but I'm not good at making things up here all of a sudden, you know, for an impromptu press conference. So I started remembering the day before the tweet that I had done about actions speak louder than words. So that's where I basically went, and also voiced my support for Mr. Trump.
That was a very potentially devastating blow to his campaign when that video came out. Do you think that yourself and the other ladies did help boost his campaign there in the closing days?
Oh, I think so. I think the Billy Bush tape was devastating to the campaign. And I think our appearance showed there's a lot worse things than words that somebody says on a tape-recorded message that are just men talk. That's what I thought of it as. It was horrible. But think of the many, many conversations in the world that take place that aren't recorded that are probably worse than that. But we had all suffered at the hands of Bill Clinton. Well, of course, Kathy hadn't, but she had suffered at the hands of Hillary Clinton.
Do you think that what's happened to you and other women will eventually be allowed to tarnish his legacy?
I hope so, and I honestly think so. I think it's a new day. I think that people are waking up to the fact that you just can't do that anymore.
You may be wondering what the former president and former first lady have to say about these allegations. We reached out to their longtime attorney, but we've yet to hear back. And while most of this preceding interview was uncut and aired in an unedited fashion, Broaddrick has finally decided to come out and speak in full in a new book out today called You'd Better Put Some Ice on That. For full disclosure, Broaddrick did ask me to assist her in writing the book. And now you have the full picture. Be well. I'm Nick Lulli.